Excellent. Thank you all so much for being here today. I see some new faces or some faces I haven't seen for a while too. If you've been to these before, you know how much I love these sessions because it is creating development opportunities for everybody, which is a passion of mine. I get to do a lot of this with companies and bring in speakers and sometimes be a speaker with organizations that are paying us. But I think it's really important for Begin Development for me to keep finding ways to connect my network and have specific conversations about things that I'm hearing from clients and things that are coming up regularly with my community and growing that community. So super special conversation for me today, because this is a conversation that I tap into often with friend, mentor, former boss, Alec, who I'll hand it over to in just a moment. But this conversation keeps coming up, not just from growing a business, but I think for anybody. And I tried to demystify that a little bit in some of our marketing. Like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur mindset. You don't have to actually be starting a business. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation about what that means and what that's meant for Alec, and just some of the wisdom that he has gained and shared with me over the years about thinking about it better. That's how I would describe it for myself. Like, those questions and the people in my life have challenged me and helped me to think about what success means and to be more thoughtful about it, and hopefully to do it better than I was doing it a year ago. So Begin Development Basic, keep growing, keep learning. So I'm really excited and happy to see you all here today for that mission to keep growing and keep learning together. Alec, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey everybody, thanks. Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, and great to see all of you. Many people I know quite well, and some people I don't know as well. So I think this would be an interesting hour to figure out what we even mean when we say success. And already in like 7 minutes, we've already touched on 8 of the things. So great. We've already done it. So I want to start by doing this. Whenever I join things like this, especially at noon, I'm like half eating a sandwich off camera, and I have just yelled at my dog. My dog is actually sleeping like 3 feet right over here, so I'm hoping she doesn't like bark at anyone. But I'd like us to just take a minute to do a simple, quiet, couple breaths in, couple breaths out, and then I'm gonna ask a question. So I'll do that now. Just be quiet just for a moment. It's gonna be riveting audio content for whoever hears this later. So go for it, like 5 seconds. All right. So my question for you is, why are you here? You took time out of your day, you signed up for this thing, you decided to show up, you're on video, you're ready to do something. You have an expectation for this hour. And I want you to write that expectation in the chat. So crack open the chat and just write a quick note about what you're expecting to get out of this hour. I will have that here. What are you hoping to get out of this time together? Amazing. I'll take it. Thanks, Ashley. Jade, I didn't see you. Hello.
Hello. I can't make my camera work. I am very sorry. New computer, and I just had to download Zoom. And in order for me to make the camera work, I'd have to shut down again. So I'm just going to listen.
I know you're eating a plate of spaghetti, and you can show us. So that's fine.
Right. Yay, Jade, welcome.
That's great. Christine is super nice. All right. So I will, Malika, because I think you and I will probably be having the bulk of this conversation, and maybe we'll open up for some notes or comments later. Why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this time?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just flying from thing to thing. And so I put that I'm expecting to pause in my day and just in this season to be more thoughtful about how I'm growing. Because I know I'm growing. I know I'm learning a lot. There's a lot happening, but I actually have to put it in the calendar or schedule a call or say, I would really benefit from this conversation with you right now at this moment in time. And it probably won't happen unless I book it in my calendar.
Unless you book it as a Eventbrite and invite people to show up. Perfect.
Yeah. This is, if no one came today, Alec, we were still going to do this just with you and me.
That's right. I'd say what I'm hoping to get out of this is, most of the conversations I have these days that aren't about my day-to-day work, for me are the preamble to writing, helping me articulate and understand how I think about my own story and my own things I like to wrestle with. And so talking these things out in public with other people is actually very useful to me. I was working with a founder of a small company the other day, and they were saying like, "Oh, I'm taking too much of your time." And I was like, "Oh, I actually love this time because both I love helping people, but also this helps me articulate how I think about things." And that is, to me, again, the preamble for writing. And so to me, the articulation and getting to help people is really important to me. And then basically finding out through conversation what and how I think about things is so much more useful to me than sitting down at a blank piece of paper and saying, what do I think about success? Let me like have the 3 points. Like I never succeed that way. It's always out of conversation. So thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing some of your notes here. I appreciate all the kindness here. And it's a good reminder that sometimes this is like lesson number one. I'll cut to the end. You don't know how you look and feel to other people, and most often, other people around you love, respect, and desire the best for you. But there are many names for this, but the resistance, negative thoughts, all that stuff gets yourself down. Because you don't know the value of your own story as well as someone else may be able to say it to you. So I appreciate all the kind words in the comments. Some of you know my story and some of you don't. So I'll just give a quick overview, and then Malika, you and I can kind of go back and forth. So I went to Pepperdine University, where many people here went there, know about it, have heard too much about it, are sick of it, etc. But I went there, and I was a business major. I signed up to be a business major my first day of my freshman year because it was B and at the top of the list. And I was like, no, I could do that. And if I want to change it, I'll change it. And I never changed it. I taught myself web design in college before it was really a thing that you could learn. I was doing small web design projects. I worked for a .com company. Many of you know Alan Beard is my first boss out of college. And I found that I spent most of my 20s living a double life. By day, I was doing digital marketing things, kind of pre-social media, websites, blogs, online communities, email marketing, etc. And then by night, I was really hustling the entertainment industry. Where was I going to fit into that? Because I really thought I was talented and funny and a good presenter and kind of had good performance energy. So like, what do I do with that? Yeah, go be an actor. So I did acting classes. I did Shakespeare. I did comedy and improv and stand-up and screenwriting courses. I sold a pilot to ABC in 2007, which sounds like a success, except that the reality is ABC was scouting non-union talent on this new website, youtube.com, to see if they could bring in writers to work for them when the 2007 writer strike happened. And so I was essentially being hired to potentially be a scab to cross union lines, or to cross the picket line in 2007. And so even in that, there's like a lesson, like, yeah, I was super successful. And I sold the pilot. And then, in my bio, I say, sold the pilot to ABC. I don't say the other part. And so the curated part of people's stories is obviously a huge part of what we're going to talk about today, but successful nonetheless, and something that a lot of people never got to do. So I count that as a cool thing. Alan Beard and I started consulting together. We were like co-freelancers, and we did a couple of things creatively that ended up being the building blocks of the agency McBeard, McNayr and Beard. And many of you know that company well, but we were largely known for those years as the best in the world at daily social media content and community management, even before we had those words. We were just making stuff on Facebook early days. We just didn't know what it was. We were just making it, and clients seemed to like that. And we were taking on opportunities as they came and growing as fast as we could muster. And we were making up as we went along the whole way through. But in many ways, there were a lot of ups and downs in those early days, which I could talk about later. But once we hit traction and size and scale and profitability. We grew from essentially 2 people to about 150 people in 3.5, 4 years. And many of the people that were part of that hiring binge are here on this call. So thank you for your help during that time. Massively helpful. And then we were approached to be acquired in 2014 by another agency, and we said no to them. We thought we had more growing to do, and we didn't like the idea of being acquired by an agency where we would be just one more agency in their roll-up of 100 agencies. And so Alan and I wrote down a list of companies that we thought it would be interesting to be acquired by, and then did no work to talk to those companies. And then one of those companies approached us about a year later out of the blue and said, we're interested in you. And about 6 months later, we were acquired by a company called Fullscreen. At the time, largely known for helping YouTube influencers grow their businesses, and then needed some extra services to add into their business model. So that's why they acquired an agency. So Fullscreen acquired McBeard in 2015, and I stuck around for about another 4.5 years. And if I'm honest, it was probably helpful for me to be there about 2 years, and then 2.5 years of like, not quite sure how helpful I was in the overall thing. I thought I was liked. It was a net positive, but I am not sure it was helpful for me or helpful for the company past that time, but I was there. And yet during that entire time, 2016, 17, 18, I had all the outwardly facing signals of success. My company was acquired. I got awards and accolades. I was named to the Ad Age, like 40 under 40, like just as I was like 39 years and 11 months old. So I barely made it in, but I made it. Had not only the proceeds of someone buying my company, but had a good job at a cool company, working within what became Warner Media and AT&T. And I would say during that time, I also was probably at one of the least happy professional points of my whole life. And I didn't know how to talk about that. I didn't know how to mention it. I thought I did a good job of covering it, but I randomly met one of the guys we worked with during that time, David Yoon. Maybe you guys know him. I saw him a couple weeks ago, and I was explaining this thing to him, and I was like, I was kind of unhappy during that time. And he was like, oh, you were unhappy? Oh, none of us knew. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought he was going to be shocked, but he was. He knew, and I'm sure many people knew, but I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know who could be safe to talk about that with. And so for me, I just kind of did what like my family dynamic always did for generations, just squelch it down, just push it way down. Then it can't bother you. And it probably is only during the last like 6 months do I really have better language through committing to writing, being more open, doing things like this where I actually say I was kind of unhappy, and I've figured out, I think, why I was unhappy and why I kind of saw myself having to like project this image of success, and I couldn't do anything to jeopardize that image. I was too nervous that people would be mad or not understanding if I talked about all the great financial gains I had, the good position I had, the role that I had, all that stuff, and yet being unhappy. I was like, I just imagined everyone saying like the tiniest violin for you, right? So yeah, some of that is just my story of the last couple of decades. I now find myself in a very secretive new startup company, just 3 of us working on some different things. Going to launch that next year, and really treating my platform as having this story and having it as an opportunity to help people, and again, work out how I feel about my own life and how I can help people further. I was talking about this with someone the other day, and he quipped, as I talked about my experience running my own agency and success and not feeling like a success and all that. He's like, oh, you're really like the ghost of Christmas future for other like kind of entrepreneurs or maybe agency owners. And I was like, oh man, that's a great way of saying it, because I have all the outwardly facing things that people might say they want. And yet I have stories about how that is both, yes, great, amazing, fulfilling, wouldn't trade it, but it's not the only thing that helps you in this thing called life. So anyway, that's where I come from in this session and in my story. Yeah, and so that's the building block. Malika, what do you hear when you hear some of that stuff?
I just love the level at which you're able to share right now. And I feel like this has been consistent all the way through that when there is time, because we're all moving quickly and I've watched you move very quickly. But when it comes down to it, I've watched you consistently stop and explore how you're feeling about something and be willing to talk about it. And I think that that's one of the things probably that has inspired me. You're one of the earlier leaders for me getting into leadership development. And I think about the leaders that were around me at that time. And I've realized in the last 5 years that I have really clear ideas about what leaders are and what leadership development is, and a really clear perspective with Begin development that not everyone agrees with, but I can really see, even as you're talking now, like how much that's influenced me, because I believe that vulnerability is power. And I believe that that introspection and the way you're sharing right now is what gives us that abundance and that opportunity, and what the true success that I'm hoping to see in leaders is. So yeah, I've heard that story so many times, and I still love hearing it because there's power in sharing that story. There's power in sharing our stories of success and failure.
Yeah, for sure. I remember someone who presented this in our full screen days, and they were basically saying, debunking the idea of brand authenticity. Like, hey, being authentic is such a buzzword, and we've, any of us have been around social media, and certainly around brands trying to be something on social media. That authenticity was the thing you would say all the time. And oh, this is Maud Standish. She said, authenticity is fine, but it's not enough anymore. And what you really must have to connect with people is authenticity plus risk, plus personal risk, skin in the game, something that is a little scary for you, both as an individual and as a brand. And when you have authenticity and risk, that's the ingredients for vulnerability. Who you truly are by saying something that's like, ooh, it's a little scary for me to say that. It's a little scary for me to say in front of this room of people who knew me all through that season. Ooh, when I had this great thing happen to me, it's kind of not happy about it. And I didn't know, I mean, that's kind of scary to say. But I think there's power in saying that and not letting the fear control you. And I think for a lot of times I had that fear of like being seen in one way or another, like control me more than I was even able to articulate.
Yeah. The amount of emotional intelligence a person needs right now to think about that, because truly, if you just dropped that onto, let's say, Threads or something, some social media platform, without having a relationship with people and being able to unpack it and have a conversation, there's a lot of judgment, right? Like there are consequences for leaders who don't think about the impact of dropping a piece of their story and what audience is getting that. And so I know why people aren't vulnerable. And I know in the work that I'm doing, when I'm asking people to be vulnerable, what the stakes are. And you can't just, it would be dangerous to say, just be more vulnerable. Have you read Brene Brown? Just be more vulnerable. And so I like how Maud kind of added some layers there. Like it can't just be authenticity, and it can't just be risk, and it can't, like, it's not one thing. It's actually so multi-layered under wisdom and emotional intelligence, because if you just take a piece out of it, it could really be damaging, right? For a leader.
Well, I think the reality is like most things in life, it's not simple.
Yeah.
Well, it's not simple. I mean, sometimes like the wisdom you learn can be relatively simple. But there's no like one quick answer, and obviously if you're on LinkedIn or any platform, or even receiving people's newsletters, there's a tendency to just say, oh, I just need that one little hack, and then it'll unlock everything for me. And it's like, that's not the case. It's just all of it together, and having a mindset of being open to what comes your way.
Yeah. Alec, I'm curious what you're seeing, since what I'm seeing for you online is sort of a new season, right, of writing and sharing. And what kinds of responses are you getting from people? Like you're clearly having some great conversations with some people, but what else is happening for you and has shifted since you've started doing that?
Well, I'd say personally, what's true for me is when I talk to people about being privately, professionally unhappy during a season of great public success, the number of people that both in the comments and in interpersonal conversation goes, they go, yes, exactly that. That's exactly how I feel. I don't know how to articulate this thing. There's not a safe space for me to talk about this with. It's why in one of my posts I said, what would I do differently? Well, I'd either talk to a therapist or a business therapist. And it's kind of a jokey way to say it, but it's kind of true. That what you can't do is get lost in kind of saying, I'll just power through these things by yourself. And actually being open to hearing other people's feedback. And the more I kind of not try to have some kind of intellectual spin on, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and now I'm better. And people, even in this writing course I was doing recently, I articulated this, and they said, hold on, you're prolific now in writing. What was the openness for you? And I was like, I don't know. I just started, and I started saying things that I was too afraid to say prior, and then good things happened. The truth is that the more honest I've been about my situation, the more positive feedback I've gotten. Hey, I hear you. I appreciate you. I respect you so much. And you've always been a great leader in my mind. So all that positive reinforcement. And I've gotten a lot of people that I think a really loving way have said, well, here's like 3 or 4 things that I saw happening that maybe you just couldn't see, or not in your face, you're totally wrong. But I mean, even, I don't think she's here, but my wife, Katie, she saw a bunch of that stuff and she's like, well, I hear you saying you were unhappy, but you were pretty happy at home. We had a lot of great things happening here. And so I wonder if you're over-indexing on being totally unhappy, and when instead you were kind of directionless professionally, because like, hey, here's like a bunch of things that happened at home that were awesome. And so for me, it was not only the positive reinforcement coming back to me, but more ways of seeing the things that I had seen in my tarnished rear view mirror, and said, oh, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was. I just kind of was in my own head about it. And it kind of even takes the sting of that fear away too, which is cool. So I have 5 myths about success that I'll walk through. And I'll take, I'm kind of lightly monitoring comments here, so I'll take any like questions or stuff you have all the way through. But five myths I've written down that I think have pretty good answers and stories for most of these. Number one, that successful people have a plan and execute it. It's a crazy myth. You heard from my story. Many of you know my story. But the idea that I engineered a day job of like web marketing, and then tried and failed and had some minor success and some experiments and stuff in entertainment, and that coalesced in a company that essentially was the combination of digital marketing and entertainment, is pure luck at best. And just me being in the right place at the right time. There was no plan. It was just me experimenting throughout my 20s. And even then, as Alan and I started this thing that now in retrospect was successful, we had like 1 or 2 clients that very first year that all fell apart and all went away. And the first like true summer of McBeard in 2011, we had $0 coming in the door, 4 months. So much so that like we were ready to shut the whole thing down. I'd lined up a part-time job for myself, like doing someone's website. Alan had got another job doing something, and we were ready to just be like, all right, this didn't work, and we're going to try and do something else. And then only then did like another gig come in that was just enough for us to keep the lights on, and then just another gig that kept the lights on. And it's easy for me to say in retrospect, oh man, all those things came together. But like it was this close to being nothing and just a blip on my life story. So much of my, I think, maturity in my like 40s is giving up the idea that people who are older than me and more successful than me did so because of their great vision and execution. I always thought like, oh, when so-and-so is saying this to me, are they really trying to play head games with me to make me do this? And then like, I thought it was like this chess match that people were having with me, and I was less talented than them. And the reality is that everybody is responding to stimuli the same way you are. You're responding to opportunities, you're responding to interests, you're responding to opportunities that are in front of you, and you're seeing where those things go. And some people have advantages that other people don't. certainly, like there's, I read something recently about the idea of talent not being exclusive to the talented, but a collection of small learnable activities that you can do and collect those together, and then it looks like you're talented. In the acting world, if you have a natural stillness and don't blink your eyes, you could be really good on camera. And if you don't naturally do that, well, then you have to learn to do that. And the talented actors in film, tend to have some advantages other people do. Doesn't mean you can't learn it, and that's true in most things. So I had to and continue to try to shake the idea that like that people just have this master plan they're running. No one's doing that. They're making plans and they're going for it, but there's not this like, okay, in 5 years I'm going to do this and then that'll work out perfectly. No one's doing that. And so you have to like allow yourself to realize that everyone's doing the best with what they got. And that is true for you as well. That's true for me as well. Malika, what do you think about that?
You see me laughing through half of that because I'm just remembering earlier conversations of being like, I can't do my own thing. I don't have a plan. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a business plan. Like, I don't know. I could never start my own thing. And having you, of course, be like, you can do it. You just do it. You just do it. And now I'm laughing because I 100% agree with that. And I just see how all the little steps, it's just true. I see how it's played out in my life time and time again. And I also see how much that fear almost held me back from not doing this thing that has brought me so much joy and so many connections and relationships that are just like the best thing in my life right now, in addition to family, best thing in my life right now professionally. And as you're talking, it just really resonates because the word that comes to mind for me is fear. Like that's the block for me. The plan is about all the things you can't do because of the fear. And then you could be one of those people in 10 years who tells a story about how you did it anyway. You had fear and you did it anyway. And so it's just really.
But I think it doesn't have to be like huge sweeping next steps that like define your next 30 years. I mean, I remember you were figuring out your first steps of what would become Beacon Development, and we were at that blue bottle across the from the office, and you're like, well, what could I do? Like, I don't have people that will pay me on this stuff. I was like, just start a cohort with 6 people who like you and would like to be together, and just do it. And then when you've done it, and you made no money from it, $0, but you had a plan, you built some materials, then you can go to people and say, hey, I just wrapped up this cohort. I have these cool materials. Would you like to talk about doing this for your team? And I suspect that doing something that made you no money and that felt like it wasn't enough was that like just enough of the next step that let you be legitimate for what became like the first gig that became the whole, success. And so the not trivializing the little steps you can take today is probably a huge learning that even myself and like my writing that I'm doing, it just started by me saying, I'm going to write every day. I'm going to say something that is a little vulnerable. I'm going to try my best to do that every single day. Yeah. And that's not like a business plan. That's just me going, I'm going to try this thing and see what happens.
Yeah. I think that needs an underline though, because well, first of all, having a great network of people who can, because their blocks are real. It's why coaching is so popular we're seeing that just in our company, but lots of people are doing coaching in lots of different ways, right? And it's because you get blocked. And I can even coach somebody out of that block. But to see it for myself is just really difficult and rarely happens. I usually need somebody to speak into that and say, oh, you're stuck, try this. And you're exactly right. If it doesn't make any money, it feels like, well, that would be a big waste of time. And you've unstuck me quite a few times, Alec. And it was about not just like, I need to have more lunches, breakfasts, and dinners with people to try and get a client. It was go ahead and do the thing that you want to be paid for. Just start doing it. Even no one needs to know that you're not being paid for it. And that 100% turned into, the reps that I needed to now be paid to do the thing. But I could not think that way in the beginning. I was like, well, I have to get a client first and then I can start doing the thing. And it's like, no, you want to do the thing? Start doing it now any way you can.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a truth to, for a season, if you're trying to do something that is outside your current job responsibilities, the things that take up your time, and you're trying to stack something on top of that and do something different, there is a degree of, you have to do both for a minute. When I try to draw a lesson from, what I said, living two lives of my 20s, well, I had to pay my bills, and I had to like continue to be a responsible functioning person in society. And that meant I had to have a job. It didn't come from money. My parents weren't bankrolling me. And yet I wanted to do this thing that I didn't know where it was going to come. I didn't know what was going to happen in the entertainment space. And so there is a degree to which you kind of have to do both for a season. And you get to define what that looks like. But so very few people just start something and then it goes immediately. You kind of have to run dual mode for a while to see how that works before you can really do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah. Especially, well, now that we're getting more information too about people's stories, whether that's like, I don't know, I'm feeling like I'm seeing more information about people's stories, maybe just through social media, and learning about the thing that I thought was overnight success, of course, is not overnight success. And they're sharing more pieces. And you're like, wow, I've followed this person or I've watched this person for 20 years. And I didn't know that they were groomed for success. I thought they just like fell out of the Midwest and someone discovered them on a street corner. Like I believed in that story when I first came to Hollywood, that you could get discovered at a Starbucks. And that I'm sure that did happen, but you start learning the pieces that went into that and what that really looked like. And that simple story, which is a beautiful hook, is often not very true.
Oh, it's like winning the lottery. Like, do people win the lottery? Yes. Do you know anyone who's won the lottery? No. I have a friend who has been an aspiring film composer for like 20 years. And he just like 2 years ago got his big break. He had a big feature film you guys all know about. And I saw him, a couple months later, and I was like, oh, congratulations, 20-year overnight success. And he's laughing because like, I know a little bit, I don't even know his full story about how he feels about the struggle and felt about like pursuing legitimately one thing that did not happen for him for 20 years. And then it did. And now he's on a path that would, but most people would look at that and say, oh, boy, look at that guy, like instant success, because that's the first time you thought about them. And that is just everywhere.
Yeah, 100%. Alec, what's your number 2? I'm just looking at our time here and I want to make sure we get your 5 myths.
Oh, no, this event's going to be 45 hours long. Number 2, all leaders are timely and stick to the schedule. No, number 2, money makes the bad things go away. And I would say that it just straight up doesn't. Now, there's an asterisk on that in general, that when you have financial success in the way that I've experienced it, it is massively life-changing. I think I wrote the other day, something about 13 things I wish I would have known when I sold my company. And the last one is and I did this, so it's not like I didn't know this, but to be generous and remember the feeling when a surprise medical bill or a surprise car maintenance bill would throw my whole life off. Because the truth is, and the real talk is, I don't feel that now. A surprise car bill doesn't throw me off in a way that it does many, 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 many people in our society, probably even people on this phone call. So there is a threshold where a certain amount of money, earnings, annual salary, et cetera, does allow you to just breathe and have some like emotional capacity to handle stuff. And there's a study that says like that's $75,000. And I invite those people to say $75,000 in Southern California or like in Iowa, like which one? Because obviously it's a different amount of money, and obviously it's different based on where you are. But I'd say there's a point where there's a certain amount of money that lets you just cover your life, cover your bills, and you have room to breathe. And that is a real dynamic. Above that, and certainly people well above that, I mean, I know friends that make crazy money, make $500,000 a year, et cetera, and they do not have that ability to breathe because of how they spend and how they manage their finances. And so it's different for everybody. But I would say that, like I said before, even in the midst of great success and and a lot of financial financial safety and the ability to just buy a house in Los Angeles. That's a huge deal. That did not prove to be very helpful in helping me identify what makes me happy, fulfilled, any of those things. And so money doesn't make the bad things go away. In fact, for most people, and most study I've done on this and conversations I've had, is the feelings you have prior to having some amount of life-changing money, whether that's like the promotion you wanted and it comes with a raise that gives you a significant amount of money, or a windfall or inheritance or anything like that. It just exacerbates the thing you already feel. So for me, I would say, if I'm being fully honest, the feelings that I had of lack of clarity or painting myself into a corner professionally, I definitely had prior to being acquired. The seeds were all there, and it just made that thing worse. Like it turned the heat up of the thing I was already feeling. And so, the financial rewards that come with success don't fix anything. In fact, and then of course with the caveat of, yes, it can help you if you're in a financial struggle, but yeah, it doesn't fix everything. And I would say that even me being able to talk about having a windfall of like essentially life-changing money as related to my company being acquired, and then having a great paying job at a media company for a number of years. That's even something I couldn't say 6 months ago out of fear of being like, will people hate me because I did this thing happened to me? Yeah, guess what? Everybody knows. When you say you sold your company, people know good things happen to you. And so there's a freedom even now to say those things and being honest and trying to be kind as I say them, because again, I feel like I don't have problems that many people do, but being able to articulate the lack of power in the good thing that happened to me and others is, I think, an important thing. How did I stumble through that one?
Great. I'd love to hear from some people in the group about what's hitting you as Alex talking, or if there's one or two people that have a reaction to that.
I'll give another like quote that I found I think about a lot. Who's the guy who's from The Office? He wrote that book with no pictures. Novak. BJ Novak. BJ Novak, I heard him in some interview, and he said something that made me like, oh, that's so real. He said, I know when it's time to stop working on a project when I say the words, but the money's so good. And I'm like, oh, that's so real. And that's exactly how I felt toward the end of my run at Warner and Otter. I was like, should I leave? I don't know. I don't know if I should, but the money's so good. The money and the gain and the things that allowed me to do kept me in a situation that was not positive for me much longer than it should have, because I fell for the trap of that simple phrase, but the money's so good. I think the more I talk about that with people that are not necessarily entrepreneurs or founders or people trying to like sell or exit a company, that's just true for anyone in any role. And there comes a time in many places where if you're not satisfied or fulfilled, and there's lots of definitions of that, you can trick yourself into like saying, well, this pays for the life that I get outside of work, and so that's good enough. And there's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but over time, over an extended period of time, for talented people who have options and actually have something to do in the world that's good and feeds their soul, like that actually is detrimental for the long term. And that's how I felt for myself over the course of a couple of years that extended into the better part of a decade.
Yeah, I feel like we're talking more and more with clients about life design. Like we're hired to help them through their work piece of their life. But if we're not talking about their personal life and the whole like integration of them as a person, then the things at work, it's like surface level, right? You have to talk about like life design, like what's the life that you want to live and what does that look like? And as you're talking, I'm thinking, man, when I started out, I thought, I want something that looks like McBeard. Like you grow it and you just get more and more clients, and then you have all these people, and then there's more of that work in the world. And how exciting would that be? And that was my vision. Like, I'm going to build like an agency of leadership development. And so I reached out to all these people that were doing it. And I feel like every single one I talked to was like, that I admired the most, because they had like 100 people, 50 to 100 people working for them, let's say. And every single one was like, yeah, I'm looking to sell, or I'd just like to get like offload this, or I'd love to like, we're just trying to keep the lights on now. We have to keep all these people employed. Like none of them had joy. I was like, whoa, my bubble burst so quickly because they were all trying to get to where I was. They're like scaling down, and I just want to do the work I love with a few clients I like and a few people that I like working with. And I was like, wait, I'm there right now and I'm trying to get where you're going and you're trying to not be there. That makes no sense to me. And now I can see it, but it really shocked me to hear that so consistently. And there's people I'm sure that love it. I just didn't talk to those people.
I met with recently a guy who kind of has a consortium, a group of creative agency owners from all over the country. I met him through Sean Sitters. I didn't see if Sean's on the call or not, but I met him through that. He essentially has about 100 agency owners who gather together in Florida once a year and talk about real problems that people in the same similar boat have. And I told him my story, and I said, I had 150 people and I sold, and this is kind of what we did and number of clients we had. And he's like, I like all your story. It's super interesting. You might be an outlier here because I think that most people, because of my story and the book I wrote and the way people have been attracted to me and what we're trying to do here, that almost no one wants to grow as big as what you've described, because their version of success and the thing that I've talked about that's drawn them to me is building what I would call, and this is almost a dirty word in investing or in like the Silicon Valley, a lifestyle company. I'm building a company that throws off enough cash for me to live the lifestyle that I want. And it's no bigger, no less, no more risk, no less. And it's throwing off whatever number you need that to be for you to be happy. To live life you want. And it's a manageable size where the size doesn't give you the additional stress. And so I was just talking raw numbers with him. I was just saying, hey, like that could be a company that throws off for the owner a $600,000 year revenue company that throws off 250 that pays for the life they want, that has like 3 employees. That could equal success for a lot of people, but in the land of social media and Gary V and Crush It and all that stuff, it doesn't feel like success at all.
Yeah.
If you're going to play the comparison game. And so there's lots of the thing I've learned, and I'm trying to even learn myself now in the midst of all the things I'm doing. And my team that I work with a lot hear this from me. It's like, okay, what's going to be the best experience for me to be me, for me to be considered the talent in the work that I do, because that's important to me. That's the thing that feels like success to me. It's why writing's important. Opportunities like this to speak are important, and me being me in the presence of client opportunities, content, etc. That's what looks like success for me in this season, and not building something that's going to this is going to scale to $1 billion. It's 3 commas or spare me the drama. Like there's all that like stupid adage stuff that like success only looks like if you do X, Y, and Z. And of course, that's not the case. That's not real life.
Yeah. All right, Alec, what's your number 3 myth?
Number 3, they work crazy hours. And sometimes they do. Sometimes I did. But the reality is that a lot of people, and certainly there's a big push for this. You've seen maybe you've seen a guy who popularized the idea of the 4-hour work week, where he build up a bunch of businesses, has like a handful of people that run them. They're all automated. But the truth is I would say successful people these days, essentially in the business setting, have figured out how to leverage things other than their time. What I mean by that is things that have people ask me all the time, like, oh, I'm building an agency. Is that a good business? And I was like, well, no, it's a terrible business. To charge by the hour is an impossible business to grow. And I don't say scale, and people say scale. Scale means there's some kind of like logarithmic addition where like every additional dollar gets more and more profitable. That doesn't happen in an agency business where you're like essentially exchanging human hours for money. It's a fun business. It's a good business. There's nothing wrong with that business. I'm in that business now. It's just not a great business model. And so the thing I would just tease on, and if there's interest in here, I'm sure we can talk about this more later, is the idea of things that you can leverage are time, almost impossible to leverage. You can scale content. Hey, we make something, we put it out there, multiple people can see it, that can grow. You can do media, which is I make something and I pay money to make sure it gets deployed to other people. That scales. And you can scale money like compounds, and you can buy things with money that makes more money. And there's things you can do there. There's a couple of good Twitter threads I've seen on this is where I have this idea. And this could be an hour in and of itself, things to leverage in the business setting. And then the final thing that is the thing that I thought one day I would be good at, but I'm not good at all, is scaling software. You make tools that other people use that has almost infinite scale to them. That's why when you hear about SaaS companies or even like Zoom that we're using right now, Zoom's a perfect example of software that scales. They make it, they have a very small investment, and it like scales infinitely. But understanding that essentially to be successful in a work environment means you have to leverage some asset, and that can be time, but that can be a bunch of other things. So that's how I think about, like, you don't necessarily have to work crazy hours, although sometimes you do. But we certainly shouldn't champion it or say it's the only way to become successful, because it's definitely not.
No. Okay, what's number 4?
Number 4 is, I touched on this earlier, but it's the idea that successful people are financial geniuses, and they're just straight up not. Now, I figured out over the course of being acquired and then sitting in a bunch of rooms that how to like think about financial documents and spreadsheets and things like that. But increasingly, like, I just find that like you don't have to be a financial wizard to be a success. And in fact, most successful people are not that. They just know how to ask other people good enough questions to get decision-making moments for them. In fact, I'd say that most successful people that I found, and certainly in the creative space, are not financial geniuses. In fact, they're very, very bad at finances. They spend money on crazy stuff. They don't know how money works. They don't know how budgets work. But they find a way to get better talent and financial talent around them. I thought of myself as a very left-brained, smart financial guy until we got acquired. And then we hired a woman named Yuna Lee, who was and is a straight up financial genius. And she showed me what financial planning really is all about. And so I think I mentioned that as a myth, just because there's so much like, oh, once I get to a certain spot, I have to be good at all these skills. I mean, sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. And don't let those things get in your way. The last thing I'll say, and this is one of the things that I think most important to me, is that in order to be successful, you need to conform to some identity that either the culture you're in, the company you're in, or even you yourself say that you need to be. One of the things I feel that I allowed to happen to myself, even in a creative company that valued individualism and speaking your mind and all that, is that in order for me to live and be successful in the boardroom, and I know the people that were in that room, nobody expressly said to me, you're acting this way and you need to shape up, McNayr, because you don't fit in. Although I did feel some of those norms to be like, I had to be this way, I had to present myself in a certain way. And to me, corporate culture, even in one of the most creative industries there is, shaved off a bunch of my individuality that left me not feeling like me. And it's like there's this hurdle you have to get over and change yourself to achieve the success that is like elusive. I am learning for myself that that's just not the case. It's easy for me to say that now once I've achieved some success, and me saying I'm going to talk about success draws people to hear me talk about success. So like, yeah, McNayr, I get it. But even me now trying to figure out something new from a place of relative safety, and trying to figure out what that means for me. And I think the more people I say that to online, the more people are like, yes, it's exactly how I feel. Corporate culture, intentionally or unintentionally, shaves off individuality in for the benefit of the average, or the degree of conformity. That doesn't have to be the case to be successful.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think that's really interesting perspective, especially in the agency world, where we're like taught to be whatever our clients want us to be. And like the mentality of conforming is the name of the game, but finding that peace within yourself where you can say like, no, I love to do this and I love to do that is such a great skill. I think when I hear when I talk to people who work at agencies and they say, we turned down this client or we walked away from this because they asked us to do this. I even had one client get on the phone with the owner of my company and say, what don't you do? And they couldn't answer the question because they didn't want to off-put that client. And so I think there's such a position of power of, being who you are and knowing what you do well and sticking to it and learning, but not forsaking that.
Oh yeah. I mean, the core years of McBeer and even into Fullscreen, our list, the way we sold was we walk into a room and say, we don't do websites, we don't do banner ads, we don't do TV spots, we don't do. If you want any of those things, there are incredible agencies for you to go work with. Definitely go work with them. If you want the best of the world at this thing, the thing we think about 24/7, you'd be dumb to not hire us.
Mm-hmm.
I think we said it in slightly nicer words than that, but like that was the sentiment. It's like, you're really going to go to your boss and say you didn't hire the best in the world at the thing you care about. Okay, go try that out. I mean, and I'm being like snarky now, but we kind of were firm like that then.
You used to talk about
it really
swag.
does work.
I mean, like that's like the swagger. You used to talk about it all the time.
Yeah. Humble swagger.
Humble
We're trying to
swag.
be, we're trying to be best at the world. We're just not jerks about it.
Yeah. I work for very part-time. I do some work for an agency and they just mostly do audio. So I read a lot of podcast ads. And I've always, they've kind of approached me like a couple times, like, we have a client who's interested in doing more social content. I'm like, just don't do it. Like, do it, stick to the rivers and streams that you know. And I do work for, I do all the ads for blinds.com. And they always come back and they're like, okay, can you give us like 6 clever intro options? And I'm like, why? They pick the same, just like tired, like sales pitchy one every time. And they were like, well, it's kind of an internal ask. Like they just want to make sure we're always presenting the best and most creative. And I was like, I respect that so much. I will give you 7 clever intros. Like, but it's true. And it's just a good reminder, also trickling down, just whatever, doing the creative of like, hey, like, I know that they're going to pick the bad thing, but let's keep showing them the good thing because that's why they hired us, and not forgetting that was the reason.
Yeah, I've working for blinds.com, and the analogy of doing anything is like, oh, you think blinds.com would be like, you know what, should we make toilets? They would never say that.
Right.
And but I've found, even in this season of like, finding my voice and all that, and and certainly like makes me mad, but Alan's been Alan Beard was good at this forever, that this thing is true. The more brutally honest you are with a client or someone about what you see is true, with a spirit of wanting to genuinely help them, if offered in that way, they love it. Every client loves it. They may not go with it because there's other political powers around them that doesn't allow them to choose and do the thing that you have said, but they love and respect you when you say the truth. We were working with a client the other day that said, hey, we're going to blast this on LinkedIn to a bunch of people. Do you like this? Do you think this is good? And we said, in nicer words, that's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. If you want everyone to hate you, please go ahead and send that along. We were nicer about it, but we told them the truth about how terrible that was and the reasons behind it, with a genuine interest in helping them, and not just trying to say like, let's do creative for creative's sake, and I'm just gonna be weird for no reason. But people love that when you're brutally honest, and that's easier to say than it is to do. But I would say, and I'm doing it myself, what's the most outlandish I can be in this meeting while telling the truth? And almost every meeting I'm in these days, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to try to say something that really pushes someone's buttons today, to conquer my own fear and to work this muscle out of truth telling. And that's me, who's been doing this for a long time.
Nice. Alec, people might have to drop here in a minute. Can you give us number 5?
Oh, well, number 5 was the satisfied thing, was the like, hey, the shave away individuality. It was like, you're satisfied if you're successful, and that's it.
I wrote them down, so I needed to know that was number 5. Shave
yes.
away.
Yeah. Successful people are always satisfied. They're not. Well, this was awesome. I mean, I'm happy to stick around for a bit if anyone wants to say hey, ask some questions, like riff a little bit. I love doing that stuff. I think we had scheduled another one after this, but I think we bailed on that. So let's if anyone wants to stick around, I'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. I'm going to stop the recording. If you want to find Begin Development, you can find us on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Begin Development. You can also find begindevelopment.com. We'd love to hear from you if this conversation resonates with you, and get you on our newsletter so you can find out about more of these opportunities. Alec, thanks for being here.
Thank you.